routinely, I can say for a fact I was up till about 2 a.m. pretty much every single day for over a year.
That is the most tired I have ever been. I was literally falling asleep while walking.
So it's literally just a question of what are you willing to not do in order to do this?
What drives you to keep pushing on the toughest of days?
As like cliche as it sounds, I think it's...
Alrighty, fellas, so I'm back with another podcast episode, and in this podcast, we're sharing the story of three brothers and a best friend who, after buying Iman Gadzhi's course, as many of us have, literally failed at like literally everything you could possibly fail at in the agency space, to all of a sudden, literally from what comes across as overnight success, hitting their first $25,000 cash collected month, closing on their $10,000 offer. And in this podcast, they're going to be detailing exactly what the key little changes that they made in their business and the little mindset shifts and the little ways they did things differently that took them from struggling in this rat race to where they are now, where, a little spoiler alert, their biggest surprise when I asked them that is, just how far they were able to come in such a short period of time. So stay tuned for this podcast. There's a lot of hidden gold nuggets in it, and I'll see you guys in there. Alrighty, guys. So, to kick this off, what inspired you to start your entrepreneurial journey, and how did you decide to go into the agency space?
Well, if you want the real honest truth of why I wanted to start being an entrepreneur is, believe it or not, saw an Andrew Tate video. Kind of inspired me, not gonna lie. I want a Lamborghini. I like cool cars. And that's why I started. As far as the agency space, again, probably like everybody else, fucking Iman Gadzhi, he got me. I bought his course and everything. And kind of just went from there.
Okay, well then, what was the timeline of this? When was that? When did you buy Iman's course?
This was a little bit over a year ago, August of 2023.
Okay, and then kind of after you bought that course, what was life like for you then?
Well, I'll rewind a little bit. So I graduated college in 2022. I got a job as an engineer, pretty good paying. I could have coasted there my entire life. When Evan said, hey, we got to make a ton of money because I want a Lamborghini, I was like, yeah, I agree, and I'm probably not going to get one working here. So that's kind of where this whole thing started. And once we got to the point where we're like, okay, we had a couple failed ideas, didn't really pan out. Mm-hmm. And we decided we're going to double down on one thing, and we're just going to think carefully in advance on what it's going to be, and then we're just going to go all in on that. So we settled on the agency space because it's got a lot of different advantages. I think you can do stuff remotely. It's relatively low startup cost, stuff like that. So when we got Iman's course, I want to say September of last year, but we'd spend pretty much all our time going through this course, trying to figure out what to do. And as it turns out now, we know we were hopelessly lost, horribly misguided. Our expectations were so far different from what we now know is the reality. So we were doing, just for context, we were doing 20 cold calls a day. And we were thinking dude, we reached out to 20 people and nobody answered us. And in our heads, we were genuinely confused. Why is this not working? Right? So advertising for ourselves was just out of the question. We didn't really understand or have enough faith in ourselves to ask for a real price. So we would put bullshit prices out there, for $200 a month, we'll do your ad account or something. And we were cold calling with this offer and just pretty much pitching it directly because we didn't know what else to do. And to absolutely no one's surprise except ours, it didn't work at all. And so we kind of been banging our head against the wall for God knows how long, probably over 8 to 10 months of this. And we managed to sign on a handful of people, but it just never really worked well because we didn't know what we were doing and we couldn't structure offers, right? We couldn't advertise and we weren't confident in ourselves because we didn't know what we were doing in the first place. And that kind of showed through. And we realized, all right, this is not working. We need to either make a new plan or we need to figure out what the hell we're doing wrong so we can make some real changes.
Well, when did you guys decide that like you needed to make a big change? Like when did you realize that like, oh, these cold calls aren't working? Like, yeah, like what happened to make you guys realize like, oh, we need to change? And what was that breaking point?
The cold calling phase really, I mean, it lasted for a while, but we went through like the shiny object syndrome as well. Like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're cold calling and that's our thing for 8 months. No, it was, we did cold calling, we set up cold email, which we, what a horrible mess that was. Like we didn't allow the accounts to warm up. Like we did not do that well at all. But we tried cold email. After cold email, we tried paid ads with
before that we did VAs. We hired
Right.
like 3 or 4 VAs out of the Philippines to do calling and like appointment setting and like all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, this isn't working, give it 2 weeks and then try something new. And it just never got anywhere because we were doing it wrong in the first place. And then we didn't even have enough information to judge it well anyway. So we literally just jumped from thing to thing to thing. And what eventually caused us to be like, all right, we got to stop is when we ran out of new things to try because we would have probably done that forever. But I literally went through everything I could think of to try and get bookings and meetings and appointments, and we literally could not get any of them to work. Couldn't get them to work because we were doing them all wrong. But we knew, I mean, at some point it's like, all right, we're out of new ideas to try.
Well, then I'm curious then. It's like if you ran out of new ideas to try, I guess the new idea that you did try was kind of when you started to work with us. So why did you do that then?
Evan is the one who saw you guys on YouTube, saw you on YouTube, liked a lot of your stuff. So it was probably about 2 months or so of seeing you before we decided to go for it. But it was the combination of Evan telling me, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy is going to actually like show us what to do and then figure things out. And then the combination of, okay, I have no better ideas. So it's either this is going to work or it's not going to work. And this will be like either the nail in the coffin or it'll be like the pedestal of the statue. You know what I mean? Like either this is going to work or it's not going to work. And if this can't get it to work, it's never going to work. So we got to come up with a new plan. So that's kind of what prompted the initial, we're going to take the leap for Catalyst.
Sweet. And then, I mean, at least to my knowledge, in the last about month, maybe a little bit over a month, you guys have collected about 25K.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
correct? Sweet. So I guess for you guys, like the main thing that I want to learn is like, or hear about is, you know, going from like struggling, rat race of new opportunities, shiny object syndrome, all that kind of stuff. Describe the last kind of few months. And then more importantly, like a specific like breakthrough, like that aha moment that like you wish you had known from day one. Like what were those?
I would go out on a limb and say the biggest thing that you guys helped us with, the number one most important thing was the offer.
Yeah.
Like that was just so massive, like for us. Like, and from based on what we were doing before that to what you helped us like come up with and help put in place, that's probably been the biggest thing. And then of course the paid ads. Probably the breakthrough moment was honestly when I had to, like, we were all working full time, obviously, because our business was not making any money. I quit my job before we had made any money with this, like about a month into Catalyst, like just before we started working the paid ads, so that we would have spots on the calendar. So obviously that was kind of like a risk, right? But like 5 days after I quit my job, we signed that first client for 10K up front, and that was like holy shit, like.
Because you also got a unique setup too, because it's like you guys are 3 brothers plus your best friend as well. So collectively as a group, what are you guys most proud of in the last entire year of this journey?
I would say sticking with it, honestly. I feel like a lot of people probably would have just stopped after like a year plus. And like we were actually working at this for like a year, just working in all the wrong areas, but we were still working on it, like putting hours into this every single day after our regular jobs, right? And just getting absolutely nowhere for literally like a year. And then
Dude,
like we stuck it out, man.
We would train objections. I was going to answer the last question with this. The big aha moment was the sales offer or the sales pitch, them coming to you instead of you going to them. We would train the 4 of us because we were all trying to juggle sales calls. We had trained, I don't even know how many hours. I don't even want to do the math, but we had trained in the hundreds of hours for just objection handling, just objection batting back and forth, and it was all completely useless. It turns out after the fact. but we were doing like insane amounts of work and getting absolutely nowhere because we were completely misguided. But I agree with Evan. I'm very proud of that. Even though it got us nowhere, it was I don't know. It's a barrier to entry we definitely had to overcome. I'm proud of that
Sure.
work.
What surprised you most about the last year?
I know it surprised me. What do you think?
I mean that I'm not. What surprised me the most is that I'm not like working for somebody else anymore. It's kind of a crazy feeling.
Yeah.
And like that, like holy shit, like this is something that we've been working for a long time. Even before the agency, we had other ideas that we had been trying. So it's probably been about 2 years or so that we've been trying to make money, and it's finally worked. And now it's like, damn, like we actually like have something that we can push forward with and really like make this something, like really something. You know what I mean? And that feeling just is like really incredible, super gratifying.
Holy shit, it's working. You know, that's
Yeah.
the kick. It's like everyone thinks like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe it'll work. We'll keep working at it, and maybe we'll get the result we want. But nobody really believes it till it happens. And then once it happens, you're like, holy shit, I can just keep doing this over and over again. It'll keep working, right? And that's the best.
What advice would you give to someone in a similar position to where you were before?
Just try to work with Dylan, honestly. Like, I'm not gonna say that you can't figure it out yourself. You can, but the amount of time that it would take you and the amount of frustration and money wasted is just enormous. Like, if we kept working at this for another maybe 2 years or so ourselves, maybe there's a reality where we would have worked it out ourselves. But the amount of time that we've saved by doing that is just like 1,000% worth the investment because of all the opportunity costs that you're missing out on. If you were to try to figure it out for years, that's years that you could have been scaling your ad accounts and making more money and growing a business. You know what I mean? So paying for other people's knowledge is definitely a big lever.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like everybody that I know that, like even with our circle here in Vancouver, where pretty much everybody is like, 100K, 200K, 300K, 400K a month. Not only did everyone do it and do it a lot, but like they're still doing it to this day. So the next thing I wanted to know is, do you guys have any habits or routines that you guys have really stuck to that have been, critical in the results you guys have gotten?
Honestly, not really. I mean, kind of like the same habits I've always had. Like I like to do push-ups, not like oh, I'll get out of bed and I'll do a bunch of push-ups, but I'll do a couple push-ups like every day at least. And really, I don't really subscribe to like these 7 habits made me a millionaire. I don't really know about that. But granted, I'm not a millionaire, so maybe it's true. But I don't know. I just feel like you got to do the work.
I don't have any of the seven habits either.
Do the work is the biggest habit. You just got to do it.
For sure. How do you guys handle like self-doubt or imposter syndrome if it ever arises? Like, when you guys first closed that first $10,000 deal, like was there any imposter syndrome, self-doubt, or are you guys just like, fuck yeah?
I was kind of like, fuck yeah, but I know he was the one who had to deliver on it. So maybe he had a different.
I did feel some doubt, and you always feel doubt, right? When you do something new and you take like the next jump up, you're always like, oh shit, I've never done this before. Like, what do I do? But I think the only real way to combat that is to just know what you're doing and kind of stick with it. So like, I trust that I trust myself, and I trust that my skills are good enough to learn or figure out whatever I need to do to satisfy on the promises we made. So, you always get some doubt, but at the same time, it's like, okay, it seems scary, but I trust myself, and I trust the people around me, and I trust my ability to learn and improve. So that's the best way, I think.
You guys struggled for a good amount of time. And the amount of time that you guys struggled for is an amount of time that a lot of people probably would have thrown in the towel beforehand. So what drives you to, keep pushing on the toughest of days?
As like cliche as it sounds, I think it's each other. Like I know that sounds like stupid, but if it was just one of us by each other, like if it was just one each individuals, we probably would have quit. But like the fact that it was like 4 of us pushing at it together for so long, we probably held each other accountable. I mean, there were a couple times where some people had some doubts, and they were like, "Dude, fuck this," and then the other people
Tell me about that.
kind of kept them in line. Well, it was never me. There was never any.
Yeah.
Listen, there was never any doubt for me. But hey, Tim and Zach, there were a couple moments where
I was the one spending. So we weren't taking in any money for most of this time. But obviously you gotta invest. So like you gotta get phone numbers, you gotta get emails, you gotta hire VAs, like all this stuff that we were doing. I was paying for the entire thing out of my own pocket while I was working at the job. So at some point I was like, all right, dude, like something's not working and it just keeps costing money and we're never getting anything back. So what's going on here? Like, what's the plan? Because I don't know how many more ideas I'm just going to try if none of them keep working, right? And he kind of like, all right, come on, Tim, it's not that bad, we'll figure it out, right? And then I guess that's kind of it. Like, we all kind of just kept, all right, we have to keep the ship moving because otherwise it sinks.
The agency space has a very low success rate, right? Now, that's largely in part due to the fact that it has a very easy barrier of entry, right? Like any monkey brain can log into their computer and start an agency, right? Not that hard. And there's an infinite amount of resources on YouTube and whatnot in order to learn how to do it too, right? So part of the reason why the agency space has a very high failure rate is because of that. And, a lot of people that start agencies aren't fit to be entrepreneurs, have no idea what they're getting into, and they just quit too soon. But from your guys' opinion and perspective, what do you think it is that sets the people that do succeed in the agency world versus the ones that don't?
It's just the amount of stuff you're willing to give up. We were up till routinely, I can say for a fact, I was up till about 2 a.m. every day, except like I said, for Sundays. We would take some time off on Sundays, but pretty much every single day for over a year. Like, are you willing to give that up? Like, are you willing to give up video games? Like, are you willing to like not do anything else except this and work and eat and sleep? Like, because if not, then it's going to take you a lot longer and you may give up along the way because you're not willing to make sacrifices. So it's literally just a question of what are you willing to not do in order to do this?
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Like when we signed on to Catalyst, I was overseas in Saudi Arabia. It was my third trip in that year. Like I was working because the time difference it was like 8 hours. So we were doing this stuff. I would like wake up at like 4 a.m., get on the call with them because it would be a reasonable time. They would still be on from the previous night, catch up on all the stuff, go work all day. And then at the end of like working outside in the desert all day, we'd come back inside and then I'd go back and do more stuff, like work on documents and like the SOP stuff, like set up the contracts, like all this kind of stuff I did in a hotel room in Saudi Arabia.
Do you think there was skills that you learned from those experiences, like in the military and whatnot, that apply to SMMA or agency?
Oh, I was never in the military. That was for work, but he was in the military. What do you think?
I mean, there's not really a lot of translation from like the dumb shit you do in the Marine Corps to...
Well, no, but the reason I say that, and the reason I asked that question specifically was like, I started 6-7 years ago, and after about a year or two I got up to about that 10 to 20k per month, and then I spent about 3 years kind of bouncing around 10 and 25k per month, right? Then at the end of that year I ran a 100-kilometer ultramarathon. I learned more about myself, I learned more about hard work, I learned more about the potential that the human mind actually has and the human body actually has. I don't think it's just a coincidence that within the next 8 months, I hit my first 100K month, right? And that's just my own personal story, right? And so the reason why I asked that is because I know you guys have, some of you guys have that background. And I was wondering if, things that you've learned there have applied to the tough days, the gritty days, building this company.
Well, I mean, yeah, in that perspective, for sure. Like, staying up late to work on this is nothing compared to, like, during the Crucible and boot camp. That is the most tired I have ever been. I was literally, no shit, falling asleep while walking.
Yeah, I know. I've been there. Yeah, that's what I was like on the 100K, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's fucking crazy. I didn't even know that was possible, right? But, like, stuff like that, how, like, you really push yourself to the point where you think you can't push any further and then you push further is, like, like, stuff like that. It definitely translates to business because sitting here in the chair in front of the computer for, like, an extra, half an hour or an hour, that's nothing compared to the stuff that you've already done in the past. So if you kind of have a track record of like stuff that you've already done that's way harder physically and mentally than the stuff that you have in front of you right now, it's so much easier to like have faith in yourself and just be like, yeah, dude, I've done XYZ. There's no reason I can't do this either. You know what I mean?
How has being an entrepreneur changed you boys as a person?
That's a good question. I think I've become more accountable. And the reason I say that is because the better you perform and the more work you do, and your results are tied directly to the amount of effort you put in. And at most jobs I find, including my own, like that's not the case. So you're not really as accountable. And so focusing on yourself and like putting yourself back on task when every single thing in the entire world is trying to pull you away, like your phone or your girlfriend or your TV or whatever, is trying to like distract your attention. Keeping yourself accountable to the goals and the standards you set in the first place is, I think, the biggest benefit I've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's definitely forced me to be more risk taking. You know what I mean? Like taking calculated risks. Biggest one being like quitting my job. I didn't even want to quit my job. Tim convinced me over the course of like a day, and when he first brought it up, I was like, dude, there's no way I'm doing that. Like we haven't really made money with this, right? And I was making like decent money. Like, I was probably making like between 10 and 12K a month selling cars. And he convinced me, dude, no, just you got to do this, right? And at first I was like, there's no way. Within a day, I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it, right? And taking that first jump was pretty big, and then like just going balls to the wall on ad spend, like as much as we can spend on ad spend, and then like we're planning on doubling that again in the next year. Is like, it's just after another, taking the risks that you need to take, even if they're kind of scary. Like, the more you do it, the easier it gets, I feel like. Yeah, that's what I would say has changed me the most.
What's the best piece of advice you've received?
Spend more on ads, maybe? I don't know. That's a tough one.
The best one I've ever heard was steady effort still counts, even if it's not in an immediate, tangible way. So, like, continuing to work for a long period of time always ends up giving you a return, even if you can't put your finger on it that day.
I like it. Alrighty, boys. Really out of interview questions. Do you guys have any final words you'd like to say?
I don't know. And we're far from like having made it. I don't know if you ever really say that to yourself, even at like your level or beyond. But like if you're feeling like the way that we were feeling for like a year or more or whatever, I would just say, I mean, if it's something that you really, really want, just keep fucking pushing at it. Like there's no reason that you can't do it, because there's plenty of people that are less capable than you that are making more money than you, just because of their perseverance and their effort. Like there was a time not even that long ago where I was like, oh my god, 25K a month. Like if we could make 25K a month, that would be fucking crazy. You know what I mean? And the more you think that way, the more you start putting those people like on a pedestal. And the fact is, they're really not any different from you. They just maybe know a couple things that you don't know, or they've stuck around with it a little bit longer. You know what I mean? Like, even the people that are well beyond us, like 100, 200, 300K a month, I don't think that's, I mean, yeah, it's impressive making that much money, you know what I mean? But that's me in a year or 2 years, that it doesn't like strike me the same way that it used to. And I would just say, like, keep yourself grounded. You're not any different from them. You just got to know a little bit more and stick at it. That's all.
Alrighty, guys. Well, what's next for you guys?
More.
Yeah, pretty much.
More, better, new. I love it. Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and do this podcast. I think a lot of people that are maybe where you were not too long ago, they're 3 months past buying that Iman Gadzhi course, doing everything completely wrong, jumping from shiny object to shiny object, niche to niche. We'll be able to get a lot of value out of this. So thank you, boys, for that.
Yeah,
of course.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dylan.